I'm Loki Karuna, and this is Triloquy. Thanks so much for coming back and welcome to my mobile setup. As I record this right now, I'm overlooking the beautiful water. I don't know if they call it the bay here in Baltimore, but in my hotel room overlooking the water, I'm here at the League of American Orchestras conference. I have some things to say about that, so stick around for the Triloquy at the end of this opus for me to talk a little bit about my relationship with this conference and how it's fed into some recent thoughts, maybe even some recent dynamic changes between me and the orchestral sector. But in the meantime, I want to introduce you to today's guest, someone that I am very excited to have gotten to know, and someone who I am just honored to continue to develop a relationship with. It is the incomparable maestro Peter Askim. Peter is a bassist, he's a composer, and a conductor, also a self-described collaborative connector who holds down an impressive regional footprint in down in North Carolina. But more than that, he's a vital disruptor in his own way. He disrupts how we train, mentor, and especially resource the next generation of music makers and how we support them and get them into our ecosystems. He's the founder and artistic director of the Next Festival of Emerging Artists, or Next Fest, as we often say. Peter has spent over a decade building an incubator for new music and for new musicians. He's doing it through a really radical lens, using a pay what you can financial model that strips away the traditional gatekeeping of high-level summer programs. One of my big tensions as a student was the fact that I wasn't doing summer festivals. Well, I had to work in the summer. I couldn't just give my money away for the opportunity to go play for somebody or to go play with other people. Some people have the resources, some students, parents have the resources to do that. Mine didn't. But Peter is really breaking through that with his pay what you can model that we talk a little bit about in our conversation. Coming up this summer for Next Fest, they, as many institutions are responding to America at 250, and they're leaning into the voices specifically of women immigrant composers who are actively shaping the landscape right now here in the United States. So we talk about world premieres of works by Andrea Casarubios, Wang Lu, Clarice Assad, amongst others. There's also collaborations and works by composers that are very near and dear to my heart. One being Adelia Faizulina, who was in the very first Earshot cohort that I oversaw in my previous role at the American Composers Orchestra, and Nilüfer Norbach, who I've intersected with a number of times, even just a few weeks ago in a program that I put together in Minnesota for the American Composers Forum. Anyway, so in this episode, Peter and I, we get into the weeds. We talk about his own transition from the bass to the podium. We look at the logistical realities of community-centric funding models, how to get in touch with conductors as a, a composer, and lots more. So I really appreciate, once again, Peter coming onto the show to get us into this conversation. Here's a little music as performed by Next Fest. The tail end here of Teen Murti by Rina Esmail as performed by Next Fest.
Yeah, so I started as a bass player and kind of a singer-songwriter and doing a lot of garage band type of things, and then kind of became a composer and became kind of what I would say a reluctant conductor. So I spent a lot of time sitting in orchestras, witnessing people who I didn't really vibe with, telling people how to do things in ways that I didn't really agree with. And I didn't want to go over to the dark side for a really long time. But I just felt like I could use more of who I am, use more of what I was able to bring to things, and just kind of make more of a mark, kind of engage every part of my curiosity more as a composer and conductor than I could as a bass player sitting in a orchestra section. So I was kind of reluctant, but once I committed, I this is who I am.
I
Just
don't
trying to be on the dark side in the best possible way.
I don't think I was familiar with your singer-songwriter background. I wonder if you could
Yeah,
talk a
well,
little bit more about that. What did that look like?
sure. Well, I mean, going back to high school, I was in a lot of indie bands before indie was corporate, actually.
Sure.
And just making music, whatever that meant at that time. So I, played in a country band for a day, and I played in a heavy metal hair band for a little bit, and played a lot of jazz, and kind of indie type of rock and roll type of stuff. Was writing a lot of music, and I think that creative impulse kind of is a through line. The way that it manifested is different, but um, that's always been who I am. Is just kind of like making things, regardless of the genre or the kind of parameters around it.
Yeah, understanding that bit of your background makes gives me some clarity around why you would describe the podium as the dark side. Sort of the
Yeah,
the telling people what to do side of things.
yeah. I think there's different ways to lead. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to chart a different way from the way that I saw it being kind of portrayed as I was coming up.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about your brand of leadership collaboration as we get into the next fest here in a little bit. But
Yeah.
beyond leading the next festival, you've really created a regional presence for yourself that I would say is impressive. You aren't just in one place. You cover North Carolina in a in a really
Uh-huh.
unique way. I wonder how you were able to develop this. Did you start at one place and sort of spread out, or how did that work?
Yeah. Yeah. So specifically this, I started with I'm the director of orchestral studies at North Carolina State University. So was living on the West Coast and moved here for the job. And then I just believe in community. I believe in a rising tide lifts all boats. So when I got here, I wanted to meet a lot of the area musicians, a lot of the area string programs. I've done a lot of clinics, a lot of all counties, a lot of regional orchestras, and then just kind of reaching out, doing a lot of North Carolina composers. And then just this past season was my first season as music director of Wilmington Symphony Orchestra, which is Wilmington on in North Carolina on the coast. And I just feel like it's a great synergy, of being in a place and of a place and investing in a place. So in Wilmington, we just announced the new season. It's with a lot of Wilmington composers. I just think that that's really important, is investing in being a member of a community.
A lot of people might assume that to develop the relationships and the career that you have, there has to be this, how can I say, this tight relationship with the so-called canon. These institutions want to make sure that conductors know their Beethoven, know
Right.
their Brahms, but
Hmm.
your advocacy of new music and American composers, from my perspective, tells a different story. Do you think it's that different part of you that has contributed to your ability to sort of create the footprint that you have? How have you balanced those expectations versus what you really want to center in your work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And I would say, I kind of have three prongs of my career we're going to probably talk about. One is that job at North Carolina State University, which is, a teaching community centered job. Then I have the next festival, which is all about living composers and kind of very serious up and coming musicians. And then I have Wilmington Symphony, which is a professional orchestra in a community. And what I would say is, I think a lot about programming and how to bring forward composers in a way that's going to make it successful,
Hmm.
you know. So and that kind of balance is titrated in a different way for each situation. I mean, next festival is all about like living composers, so I don't have to worry about Beethoven. Um, and in Raleigh, this is at a research university, so it's an R1 big research university. So I think the research part of it, I think, is just kind of inherent in what I do there. I mean, we can look backwards, but it's also about developing the future. And I was also really lucky in that job to have a predecessor who was really focused on music of the 20th century in
Hmm.
particular, and he was a real advocate for that. So it was a really good match. I didn't have to come into a job where everybody only wanted Beethoven. They were already used to the weird stuff,
Sure.
so it was just a different flavor of the weird stuff with me.
For me,
um,
it's
yeah,
yeah. As you talk about 20th century music, I
yeah,
remember, a decade ago when I was first getting into radio, that phrase struck fear in so many
right,
people's eyes, or
right,
and the assumptions that they make around what that aesthetic is. And
right,
we're 25 years into the 21st
right.
century now. I wonder how you help audiences, help colleagues, stakeholders think about definitions around phrases like contemporary music,
Right.
American music, 21st century music. How do you
Hmm.
how do you frame that for people in a way that doesn't strike the fear that so many of us have experienced from folks in the past?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll just say, just to go back to my predecessor, he was really into, like, he would do a John Cage festival, and
Mm,
just kind of priming people that music is a living art, and that priming the curiosity, I think, part of things. As most of what I do, I try and talk about living composers, try and talk about the people who are writing and the people who are doing things now, rather than, this is that, this was then, this is American music, or this is 20th century music. It's just like, no, these are people who are creating right
hmm.
now, you know. And as much as possible in each situation, I try and bring in the composers so that people can connect it with a face and a personality, and this is a person who's got a lot more in common with you than Beethoven.
Right,
You
right.
know, we're living in the same stew of today.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's really important for me in my advocacy for composers
Hmm.
is helping people
Hmm.
understand that this isn't just music that you're listening to. This is an
Right.
experience.
Right.
There's a broader context here. I wonder
Right.
how you engage this idea of context beyond the fact that this is a living, breathing person. We live in a world with benefits. We live in a world with challenges. So I
Sure.
wonder how you think about the connections between narrative and music, the world we live in these musical experiences.
Yeah, I try to talk about composers as kind of psychologists who kind of help us see, like,
Hmm.
different ways of seeing the world, different ways of interpreting what's going on. Um, and to me, I think, we can talk about woke or diversity or what. I'm just really interested in people's stories
Yeah.
and how they see and hear and make the world. I mean, I think that's how I try to I just, cool, this person is coming from a different language, a musical language. Let's get into that and let's bring it to life, and then, let's bring people into that. That's kind of how I try to present it. Just yeah, as ways that other people are experiencing and interpreting the world today.
Have you found that this work has, for you, become easier over the years? Is the pushback the same as it was when you were first getting started? What would you say to that?
Sure, again, it's, different in every situation, but at the university, it was a little bit at the beginning. It was like, oh, are we really doing like this weird stuff? And now they're used to it.
Hmm.
They're like, cool. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, like, what's the next one? Um, and I would say that I try to think really carefully about which composer I bring into which situation, try to make the right match for the audience and the orchestra, um, so that I hopefully people trust me over time.
Hmm.
And the same in Wilmington is like, they're like, well, no, I will say that they are very curious, and they know who I am when they hired me. There's a long relationship with Sphinx organization. There's a long history of, Wilmington's a super interesting place historically.
Hmm.
It's the only place in the United States where there's been a racial coup, right? Where the government was overthrown by white nationalists in 1898.
Oh wow, I don't know this history.
This is the only place in the country where that was happening, and so I think that there's a willingness and an openness to, like, that's part of our history there, you know. So there's a curiosity that I think with trust building is really good. We just announced our new season, and people are really excited about the range of music that's happening,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, what are the technical aspects of that trust building? You talk about, pairing audiences with, certain types of music,
Right.
certain narratives. You aren't just sitting in front of your computer or sitting in front of scores. I imagine that you're
Mhm.
out with the people. I wonder if you
Right.
could talk about that. What does that look like?
Sure. Well, I mean, I engage with the orchestra all the time, right? So I know the orchestra, I know what they do well, I know who they are. Like putting Boulez in front of, college students is like probably not a good idea. So I don't do it. Um, and trying to match the level of difficulty and the kind of accessibility of the language. All of these things are on a spectrum, so I would, and in terms of talking to audiences and being in the community, I just try to center the people and the stories,
Hmm.
and stories that I think will resonate. I do at the university and now in Wilmington, I do a lot of kind of thematic programming where, Bach is fitting into the same thing as Rina Ismail, and
Sure.
it's like a continuum, right? So I think that gives a permission structure for people to see it in different context too.
Yeah, yeah, I love a good theme. And in my
Right,
first radio job, every day was a theme. So I
right.
tell people, if you need help thinking of a theme, I've probably thought of it and have the program archived.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like, movie music, right? Like
Hmm.
we're kind of people will tolerate a lot of extended techniques and strange things happening in movies because it's part of the story. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like there's a lot of dissonance like that you just expect in a horror movie that you would walk out of the concert hall,
Hmm.
for. But
Hmm.
if there's a story, okay, yeah, it gives a context to it that I think really helps.
Well, you talk about the story. I'm thinking about the story of America as
Right.
we approach 250 years. My
Exactly.
my assumption, as I built my own programming, in the work that I do with American Composers Forum, I assumed that I would see a lot of Sousa, red, white, and blue, that sort of programming. But a lot of organizations are coming up with some really interesting things
Hmm.
that dig deeper into that
Hmm.
American story.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask two questions with that in mind. The first, does that signal anything for you? The fact that we aren't just seeing a summer of Sousa for 250 years of America.
Gives a little hope, doesn't it? Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's the last 6 years have been really interesting in terms of like programming, right?
Hmm.
And well, there's a lot going on politically, and the fact that it's not all Sousa, I think is good. I think that been a permanent shift that we can't go back to all Sousa. I mean, speaking for myself as programming, um, with Next Fest, I've done kind of as a response to America's 250, I've programmed all women immigrant composers
Hmm.
because that I like those are American composers. This is our story. They're a part of our story. That's for me what makes America interesting is all of these different takes on who we are and how we translate that into sound. With Wilmington, we're doing an outdoor fireworks concert, right? So we've got Copeland and we've got Bernstein, and we have to do, there's a few things we have to do. But I think it's really interesting. Like, what is an American composer? What is specifically like a North Carolina composer?
Sure.
So we're doing Thelonious Monk, who was born in North Carolina, John Coltrane, Nina Simone.
Oh
These
yeah.
are all North Carolina composers who actually are like great for an outdoor like summer concert on the blanket with wine.
Yeah.
And we're doing James Taylor and Charlie Daniels and I mean just and beach music. So that I think there's ways to do it that are not all Sousa, you know, that have integrity, that celebrate America. you know.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to ask you in response to, shifting tides was how you form these definitions. I mean, focusing on women immigrants feels very intentional. That's not something that from my perspective just happens to be what the theme is for Next Fest. It's clear to me how you tie in the Monk and the Nina Simone as we think
Right,
about geography. But when
right.
it comes to Next Fest, I wonder if you'll say more about why women immigrant composers, again, considering the intentionality that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel that
right.
came from
No,
that.
yeah, I would say that it's not totally a coincidence, and it and it's a response to thinking about like what, like really, what is America at 250? What is it that I feel is important about America that I can celebrate unironically, and in some way, direct a just to direct a little conversation.
Hmm.
Or that's just how I chosen to program this, because I think it's just really, these are six amazing composers, super great. We could just not talk about who they are and where they come from, but I think it's important to talk about who they are and where they come from,
Yeah,
you know.
indeed.
And I think it started with Andrea Casarubios. I've been a fan of her music for a long time. We programmed Terencia, which was a really great string orchestra work, and then started a conversation a couple years ago about a new piece from her. And then just kind of, usually programming starts with a kind of like one solid, um I don't know, just one thing to build around.
Hmm.
And for me that was her, and then I started thinking, okay, what goes with this, and when is this, and where is this, and who's it with, who's it for, and that's how it developed that way.
Yeah, you're making me think of a question that composers ask me all the time is, how do I get in front of these conductors? How do I have
Right,
these conversations to get these performances? In the case of Andrea, there's a world premiere that's coming
right,
up this summer. But it sounds like that first connection between you and Andrea was you're just being aware
right,
of her music.
right.
Did that happen in a concert setting? Were you flipping through CDs?
Yeah, I
How did that
mean,
happen?
yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, like my radar is always on, I mean, I'm always just kind of like trying to keep up with the flood of who's out there and who's doing interesting things. That actually came through one of the fellows at Next Fest. Like um, we just had an opening on a concert. I was like, I just can't find the right piece.
Hmm.
And I was happening to talk to one of the fellows who went to see Sphinx Virtuosi play. I said, "Oh, I just heard this great piece last night, Horencia." And I was like, "Oh, I've heard of her. I don't really know anything about her. I'll check it out." Uh, Loved it. Ended up programming it, and then I've met her a couple times, and I said, "This is I really want to do more of this." So it always happens in different ways. I will say, like, I get a lot of like um unsolicited cold emails,
Sure.
like, here's 18 of my orchestra pieces. Like, I don't like, who are you? Like, why is this a good fit? Like, if somebody has done a little bit of work and says, "Oh, I think that you would like these because you've done this," or those kind of things, I'm more likely to look at them just because of the volume of stuff that comes across my inbox.
Yeah.
Like, who like, yeah, I'm totally interested, but like, just that extra bit of why it's interesting for me, or who I am and why are you sending this to me, right, rather than just a blanket thing. I think that's just like that, maybe just that the little human connection, you know, really makes me think, oh, okay, let me check it out.
I mean, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of I'm gonna get a lot of emails based
Yeah,
on that
I know,
response you
I
just
know.
offered. So really just to put a fine point on it, it
Right,
sounds like you're saying the cold call email can work if the composer is writing to you as
right.
opposed to just throwing out a broad net to
Yep.
conductors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and look, let's be honest. I wish I were the person who like just had 24 hours a day to look at every single piece of music ever written and everything that comes. I am just, this is who I am in this moment, being super busy. Like, sure, just give me a little bit why this is interesting.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, there's a lot of music that I'm just I'm just not going to do because it's not appropriate for the groups or the audiences or the players or whatever, but like maybe you really love what I did with that, or you saw that I worked with this person and I mean, some kind of connection, I think. Um, Not saying I'm proud of this. I'm just saying
Hmm.
this is a reality. Like I'm a human being, like
Yeah.
talk to me about it like as a human being, like, I want to know who you are and why you think I should be interested.
You talk about
I'm probably going to get a lot of emails about this too, but you just compel me to kind of be an honest responder. So for
I
better or
mean,
worse, we're going to hear about it.
that's what we're here to do. You talk about there's some things that you don't do that aren't necessarily a good fit or
Yeah,
don't work. I think
right, right.
talking specifically for Next Fest, I
Yeah,
wonder what a piece requires to be a good fit. First of all,
sure.
this is a strings only ensemble. I think we
Exactly.
should start there.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, that's, sometimes the devil's in the details, really, is like, if I can't do a, triple wins piece with Next Fest.
Hmm.
So it's the fact that it's living composers. It's, you know, I I'm open, actually, I mean, there's not that much string orchestra music out there. It's something that we need to, that's why we're always commissioning,
Hmm.
why we're trying to add to it. Um, so I'm looking for something that'll fit on a program like we do. Like, again, it comes down to details, right? We do 60 minutes of music, right? So like a 45-minute piece, we're probably not going to do it unless it's with our featured guest artist. So something that's like in the right time frame, that is interesting in some way for the fellows who are up and coming musicians, like learning something new, or just a new language, or something that fits into what our audience might want, you
Hmm.
know. Yeah.
Hmm. Is
Yeah.
Next Fest being a strings only ensemble? Is this purely an artistic decision, or is there a world in which you could add wins with
Oh yeah.
a certain amount of funding or whatever it would
Exactly.
take?
Yeah. No. So what I would say, and we can talk about the origins of the festival a little bit, is that it started as a string orchestra, uh, because that is an ensemble that's manageable. It's scalable. It can be smaller, it can be larger. Um, and I'm a string player, so I wanted to do something that I could really make a contribution to.
Hmm.
We've always been looking now for the right opportunities to add things, right? So we added a composer workshop with Aaron Kernis because we had this fabulous string orchestra, and like, how can we serve composers, and can we educate the fellows? And then because we had that, like, let's add the choreographers because we've got great new music. So
Hmm.
I mean, that's how a lot of these things have evolved. I would love to be able to do larger works, and to make an orchestra festival, and it just costs more money.
Yeah,
um
that's just the
Costs
reality.
more money, yeah. I mean, if one of those emails that comes into one of us offers to pay for it, let's talk,
Sure.
like, for real. And I've spoken with other wind groups and thinking about collaborations, or is there a way that we can do this that works for everybody? It's basically capacity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to chase the rabbit too far off the
Sure.
trail, and I do want to talk a little bit more about the origins
Yeah.
of Next Fest. But
Yeah.
we're really circling around this challenge that so many arts institutions of many different sizes face. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
as we're recording this, people are talking about the Met and
Right.
their challenges, and they're this
Right.
huge institution. I wonder
Hmm.
how carrying Next Fest all of these years has helped you think about sustainability. I mean,
Right.
is there another way to do this other than hoping we get that email or hoping that we, are at the bar with that person with really deep
Right.
pockets? Is
Right.
there another way?
I can only speak from my experience, but Next Fest was really intentional, kind of like from the beginning. So I was working at a boarding school, which was crazy expensive. And they were trying, they had historically given a lot of scholarships to Bulgarian students and Russian students and mainland Chinese students. And those were really interesting musicians. And they were trying to scale that back. So I started Next Fest more like a social experiment than a music festival. Like, what happens if we treat people the right way? What happens if it's about the music? What happens if money is not an object, right? And so also, that ties into the strings only thing is it was more manageable. I didn't want to have an organization like the Met where you just the budget is so huge that you are locked into things. So I
Yeah.
started small. It was 1 week. It was only string players. But from the very beginning, there were two rules. Like, first is no jerks. And second is pay what you can. Um, because that was interesting to me. Everybody told me it was a really bad idea. Um, and I said, well, okay, it might be. So let's see. And not only has it worked, I mean, it's challenging, but it not only has it worked, but it has kind of made other things possible, right? So that pay what you can thing starts with a conversation with me and each fellow who applies.
Hmm.
I just say, look, it costs us $5,000 to have you here, but I don't expect that you're going to pay that because like you're a musician in your 20s. We don't balance our budget on the backs of young artists.
Right.
What can you do? Like, what can you pay? And I don't want to negotiate. I don't want any games. It's like whatever you tell me, I'll say, okay, then I'm going to go away and try and raise the rest of the money to make up that difference. And I think that's made a big difference in the feeling of the festival because everybody is there at a price that they name. Nobody's getting more scholarship than anybody else.
Hmm.
And it's also, there's a lot of fellows who can't afford to go to other festivals. Like maybe this is their first festival or this is the only festival they can afford. And so I think we've gotten a different type of festival fellow. And I think that really resonates with the right kind of donor too.
You're unlocking some specific memories
Yeah.
for me that I haven't
Uh-huh.
thought about in a while. When as an undergraduate bassoon student, it
Right.
was really drilled into me that going to these summer festivals is a necessary aspect of your
Right.
career. That's how you
Right.
make these connections.
Right.
And for me, it wasn't just a conversation of my not being able to afford to pay for the festival
Hmm.
in the summers. I needed to pay for my life, so it
You got
wasn't
to
only
work.
dishing
Yeah.
out money.
Right.
I needed to
Right.
work.
Right.
So you have me thinking about that. I wonder, you know the conversations that you have with these fellows, it
Hmm.
must be a conversation that you've gotten better at over the years or more
Right.
comfortable with.
Right.
How do you turn that into a comfortable experience, because it can't always be the most joyous experience for a 20 something to come to you and say, hey, I really want to do this but I'm broke.
Yeah, I think it's really important to make them feel comfortable about that. I mean, the goal is that they're going to be there and they're going to be focused on their art and they're not going to be freaked out about money. And like, we just don't talk about it. I mean, it's just like they say, but no, 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 really, really, how much should I pay?
Hmm.
No, no, no. It's like you name your price. Yeah, yeah, but how much do other people pay? It doesn't matter. And it's like I kind of have to convince them that actually it's true. Like I don't really want to talk about money. Like you tell me, but be honest. Like don't mess with me. Like just tell me I don't want to negotiate. And but I think that also becomes the basis of I think it's intentional in the way that I treat them with respect and listen to who they are, where they come from, try to meet them where they are,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And so they're skeptical, but I try to present it like this is the anti-festival,
Yeah.
right? I started this as kind of like, no shade on Aspen, but this is the anti-Aspen, right? We're not trying to be Aspen. You will be here and you won't think about money.
I hesitate to ask this question,
No,
but
don't.
uh, I imagine there are students that can pay, that can
Sure.
really,
Yeah. Yeah.
carry. I hate to say carry their financial weight, but really offer the support to the festival that it really needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what is that conversation like? How do you determine, if a student can pay you $5,000, $10,000 to help
It's
make
they
this possible?
whatever they tell me they can pay, that's what they pay.
Okay, okay, I love that.
I don't want to do that, you know? It's like, but then it's on you. Like if you know you actually like mom and dad can like actually foot the bill for everybody and you're paying $300, well, that's on you. That's on you. You know that. You know
Okay.
that where everybody's coming from. And I try to be also clear about like, this costs money. It's not
Yeah.
free. And actually like I thought about that a lot at the beginning. It's like, is this free? No, it's not. I mean, somebody's paying.
Yeah.
It might not be you as a fellow. That's cool, but somebody's got to. So that's why I try to be super clear that I will take you at your word because this I want to build a place which is based on respect and trust and no jerks. Um, but then I tell them I have to go raise that money, you know.
I
So
wonder
I try
how
to, yeah,
I wonder how these conversations play into just the general artistry of the so I did end up playing some festivals in
sure,
my career. I
sure.
don't remember a one-on-one conversation with the music director being a part of that process. So
I think it's pretty rare. Yeah,
beyond the financial piece, it
right,
seems like that one-on-one initial
right.
connection plays a role on the artistic side as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, it serves two purposes. First I call, I don't know any other festival where the music director calls everybody who comes.
Hmm.
But I'm interested in who are these people as people, like part of the application, which is free, by the way, and short, is like, why do you want to be here? Who are you? What do you want? What's like, just like I was talking about the cold calls. It's like, this is not a festival for people who want to play Tchaikovsky concerto 24/7 and be famous. That's a lot of other things, right? So
Hmm.
like, who are they as people? Are they jerks? Just I mean, you can tell a lot about people when you just have a conversation, and then also setting that feeling like I care about you as a person. This is a community. These are people who we live together, we make music together, and we look out for each other. So that's what it's kind of that multi-pronged thing.
The
Yeah.
emphasis that you put on making sure that there are no jerks tells me that you have some experience with with jerks. Not asking you to name anyone, but that's just what I'm getting because that is a
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
conversation that
Well, it's
keeps
very
coming
much,
forward.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's very much the anti-festival, right? Because like every music festival that you've been to is expensive and there's always one person, you know? And when you have 20 people living and eating and making music together and you want it to be a community and you want it to be about the music, like that one person, it just takes one, you know?
Hmm.
And well, like I said, it's an experiment. I wanted to see if it could be done because I hadn't been to a festival where there was no jerks.
Hmm.
Most
Hmm.
people haven't been to a festival where there's no jerks. So, it's an experiment. So far, so good. 13 years, no jerks.
How do you keep from being the and I say this, from my own experience
Sure.
as well. How do you keep from being the, hello fellow kids sort of administrator? You talk about, building this community. I wonder what the separation between music director and musicians looks like at Next Fest, or maybe there is no separation.
I mean, maybe I'm not the best person to ask. Maybe you should ask them.
Sure.
But I try to, you know, I try to kind of curate a community and support that and be around and be accessible and be like hang out at meals, but not like impose myself.
Sure.
I mean, like if they want to hang out with me, they know where to find me. I do a lot of coaching. They could come play for me anytime. I don't like hang out at the 2 in the morning jams that they
Sure.
do, free improv jams. Um, they can invite me if they want to, but like this is not about me. It's like creating this community. And I don't want to be like the fellow kids kind of guy. Like you know, I try to think about how I can like somebody's got to lead things, somebody's got to make things, but I don't want to be like trying to be cool, and I also don't want to be trying to be like an authority figure. Like
Hmm.
I just I'm really interested in making this music sound great. Let's do it.
We mentioned the world premiere by Andrea that's coming
Yep.
up by
Hmm.
Next Fest this summer, and there
Yep.
are a lot of other composers, living women composers,
Right.
whose works are going to be featured. You know,
Right.
I take a lot of pride
Right.
personally, and not only knowing these names when I read them
Hmm.
on press
Hmm.
releases, but feeling some connection to
Right.
their careers. You know,
Right.
Adelia, who you'll
Yep.
be featuring,
Right.
was a part of the very first Earshot cohort that I had
Right.
something to do with
Right.
back
Right.
at ACO.
Oh yeah.
Nilufar has not only been an Earshot mentor, but
Right.
she's being premiered by an orchestra in Minnesota here in a couple months, and
Hmm.
we've scheduled a pre-concert talk. You know, so anyway,
Oh
all of
yeah.
that to
Yeah.
say it, I
Right.
always feel really great feeling like I'm a part of this community of
For sure.
composers
Right.
that are doing things. I wonder what this looks like for you. You must have a similar feeling, you know, considering the number of commissions and new music that you've centered.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I think it's yeah. I mean, each composer, there's a different story. I mean, Adelia, I actually met because, I always have my tentacles out, like trying to find and I was talking with Derek Vermel, and he said, "Oh,
Hmm.
there's this great composer who's going to do an earshot." And so we had her as a fellow at Next Fest, um, a long time ago, in 2020, I think. And then I loved her music. And so then I commissioned an orchestra piece from her for the Raleigh Orchestra. And now we're bringing her back as an alum of Next Fest to write to commission a new piece, right? So I try to keep my ears out and then try to a lot of the composers I work with in different contexts, you know. I'll commission them in Raleigh or perform them in Wilmington or so, and then a lot of the music that we've commissioned is like now out in the world. Yeah. So I think, yeah, no, I feel the same way you do. It's cool to see where they come from, try to support them through the different stages, and then they become part of the repertoire.
As the composer advocacy person, you know,
Mm-hmm.
speaking for myself, I'm
Right.
always trying to help composers understand it's great to get that big New York Phil, Chicago
Mm-hmm.
symphony premiere, but
Right.
there are certain complications that come
Right.
with those sorts of collaborations. The big one being access to recordings
Mm-hmm.
of the works, but not
Mm-hmm.
all, but you know, also to mention, you know, the difficulty working with some musicians who have been playing Brahms for 40 years, and all of a sudden they have this new piece
Right.
of music on the stand, and how they may feel about that. So I'm always advocating for the smaller organizations, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking to composers, just
Right.
to help them make sure that they aren't overlooking opportunities that might even be better for them.
Right.
I
Right.
wonder how you engage that conversation as, you know, on the artistic side, as the
Right.
leader of these
Right.
relatively smaller organizations.
Right. Yeah. No, I think this is something I think about a lot, and that's like I've been very intentional about, especially in Raleigh. So, um, with this job, this university job, we just did our 10th year of a new piece on every program.
Hmm.
So we just premiered with Jeff Scott's new trumpet concerto, our 42nd orchestra commission in the last 10 years. And a lot of those are composers who are coming up, but none of the big orchestras have taken the chance on them. I mean, big orchestras are kind of, for whatever, for lots of reasons, kind of risk averse, right?
Hmm.
But if there's a great composer coming up, like Paul Wianco, I commissioned
Yeah.
his first orchestra piece. And there's a number of um, we've done about 10 composers who were coming up who just hadn't written an orchestra piece. And I think it's really important. And I think about this a lot. It's like a lot of these great composers writing for orchestra is a different thing. There's notation things. There's like, how do you deal with balance? How do you deal with like instrumentation? How do you do all of these things? And so what I try to do is be very involved in the process, as kind of a translator. Like, I don't think this notation is going to work.
Hmm.
Or like, you got to have parts that look really good. But also on the other side is like they get a video of their music that they can use for whatever they want. you know. So I try to be really involved and helpful, so that when they get that New York Philharmonic premiere, which or Cleveland Orchestra premiere,
Yeah, yeah.
um, they have already written an orchestra piece and made some of those, you know, mistakes, challenges, recalibrations
Hmm.
outside of that spotlight, you know. I mean, there I'll say, that with in the last 6 years, right, since George Floyd, everybody wanted like the diverse composer, right? And there were a
Right.
lot of composers who were, and I'm just being honest with you, a lot of composers who were great composers, but writing an orchestra piece for a big orchestra under time pressure, like maybe they weren't being set up for success because
Sure.
they were not being given the support to, behind the scenes, all of the logistics to be successful in that.
Hmm.
And so that's what I think is really important is like, let's let's do something and do it in the right way so that the end product is a success. So that's kind of what I see myself as kind of like the intermediary between orchestras and composers, trying to like the horse whisperer kind of thing, but like create that ecosystem where they're supported, the end product is good, and they get the recording that then they can use to pitch to New York Philharmonic.
As this intermediary, how do you keep the technical guidance separate from the taste guidance? How do you keep yourself in check to make sure that you aren't changing their vision but pushing them forward, even if it might be something that you as a composer would do differently?
My philosophy is like I'm commissioning them because I'm interested in what they want to say.
Mm,
Um, and so there's that kind of foreground of like I trust you because I want to hear what you do in this medium, right? I really try not to change anything. I think it's more about implementation. It's like I just don't think that's going to work. Like I that extended technique, cool. Let's find a way to make that work. Or what's your intention with that? But in my opinion, it's not going to work as it's conceived. So let's find a way to make it work. Yeah, as much as possible. I really try to stay out of that because I'm interested in them and what they want to say. But
hmm.
also, if it's not logistically done well, their vision won't come across. You know what I
your
mean?
your use of this phrase extended technique, I'm always telling composers and colleagues, what if there were just techniques? Like what if we weren't
Right.
othering certain aspects of the way that we create music?
Mm,
It seems like, and we do have to acknowledge for composers that most oboists don't typically do this thing when
mm-hmm,
they're
mm-hmm,
practicing
mm-hmm.
or when they're performing. It
Right.
seems like again with the way that you've really centered new music,
Yeah.
you must feel that you've normalized certain quote unquote extended techniques or different ways of thinking about a commissioning
Mm-hmm,
process,
mm-hmm.
that are really helping us frame a new way to think about music, a new way to think about orchestral performance,
Sure.
the orchestral experience.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think it comes back to the context and how it's presented, right? Like when we're talking about that orchestra musician who's played Brahms for 40 years, to get them to do what you want, it's on you to be clear what you want,
Hmm.
right? So, and I think I think it's a two-way street of respect, right? And that's why I really think a lot about notation and about how you present, quote unquote extended techniques or what, like as composers, we need to do our homework. I think,
Hmm.
I mean, that cellist who's in playing Brahms for 40 years was like in the practice room 6 to 8 hours a day for, years, right? They've done their homework. They may be curmudgeonly, but like if you respect that and don't just, like say, like, actually, what is the best way to get them to do X? How can I notate it in a way that's clear, that shows them that I respect them, that I've done my homework, and I'm not just, you know, asking them to do something for no reason? Then I think, orchestra musicians kind of go, okay, all right, all right. If you've done your homework, I might not like it, but I'll give it a try. But if they sniff that it's just like, I don't know, why don't you do something for no reason? They're gonna be skeptical, and I don't disagree with them. You
So
know,
no jerks and respect the curmudgeons.
if you want the curmudgeons to play your music well,
Sure.
You got to respect the curmudgeons because the curmudgeons, they did their work.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's
they
right.
did their work.
In recent months, for me, as I think about what my career has looked like so far as it relates to composer advocacy,
Hmm.
being the orchestral musician, frustrated that
Right,
we're stuck on this European music, to the
right,
radio host that's really putting forward living composers, to the
right.
administrator that's where, it seems like my pie in the sky, my final form, as it
Hmm.
were, that I hope for is to be the commissioner. I just hope that
Yeah.
one day some money comes and I'm the
Hmm.
person who just gets
Hmm.
to commission all of the artists. I see that
Hmm.
as my final form as it
Hmm.
relates to composer advocacy. I wonder what that looks like for you. What do you hope for in the coming
Well,
decades?
I hope when you reach that final form that you remember me because I want to keep on commissioning. Um, no, let's, let's work together. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Unfortunately, it comes down to money is, trying to um I think just keeping on doing this kind of work, and maybe with more capacity, and being able to pay composers more. I have a lot of conversations with composers. I say, I will do my very best for you and I will work with you and you'll get a recording and your parts will look good and all these things, but I can't pay you like what I want to pay you.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would love to be, come into that same pot of gold. Not for me, just as a pass through,
Exactly.
just to treat people like they should be paid, um, treated and paid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how
Yeah.
can folks learn more about you and what you have coming up this summer with Next Fest?
Sure. So my website is www.peteraskim.com. Um, there's a lot of info about Next Fest and about what we do and about our philosophy and our upcoming shows. We got shows in Hudson Valley and New York City coming up in June. That website is next-fest.org. Um, some really great shows coming up, including the show of women immigrant composers, and then also a kind of works and process with these young composers and young choreographers in New York City on June 11th. And then Wilmington Symphony, we just announced our um, new season, which I'm really, really proud of. It's got like basically every famous piece of classical music, every ringtone you've ever heard is on this season, and some really, really interesting other programming. Lots of different voices, lots of different perspectives. Yeah, super excited about it. And that's the Wilmington Symphony Orchestra in Wilmington, North Carolina, not to be confused with the orchestra in Wilmington, Delaware.
Sure. Well, I'll leave you with my final question here. There are a lot of reasons for a lot of people to oppose the notion of celebrating America at
Yeah,
all.
right,
And that's something that I hear. That's something that I can even say I've personally experienced
right,
over my life. I wonder
right.
how you engage this reality, affirm that perspective, while encouraging us all to think about the aspects of America, like women immigrants, that
Hmm.
are deserving of our
Yeah.
celebration.
No, I think America as you know, I think it's not irredeemable. I think there's a lot of great things, and the things that I find really interesting is the kind of, the melting pot aspect of it. Um, that there are lots of people from all over the world. I mean, I wasn't born in the States. I came here when I was 4, and I think that sort of informed me on some subconscious level to see the good and the bad from a little bit of a remove. But I still believe in the concept. And so with both Wilmington, talking about, Monk and Nina Simone and Next Fest, the Women Immigrant Program, I think that there's a lot to celebrate. And I think actually we need to celebrate it louder right now. Um, yeah, I think it's more important than ever to celebrate the things that need celebrating. That's my hot take.
That's an excerpt from a work called Songs My Mother Taught Me by Peter Askim himself. That recording comes from a performance at the Kaufman Music Center in New York as a part of the next Festival of Emerging Artists. Really wonderful, beautiful work there. Nice glimpse into Peter's compositional voice, as you heard from him directly. So thanks so much again to Peter and their entire team over there at Next Fest for helping me get this set up. Cheers to Peter. I'm looking forward to developing even more of a relationship as the years go by. Shout out to Peter. He's a good guy. So as I mentioned at the top of this opus, I'm using my mobile setup here. I'm in a hotel room overlooking the water in Baltimore. And actually, what's kind of cool about this setup is I feel like I can walk around a bit. I think I'm going to pace the floors as I rant here for a second for this triloquy. So my first time at the League of American Orchestras conference was exactly 10 years ago here in Baltimore. It was 2016. I was working with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. I was, 3 years into my job there as second bassoon. I had had tenure and everything. But as a part of the League of American Orchestras conference, sort of look into diversity in orchestras, they invited people who had done fellowship programs, diversity fellowship programs in orchestras across the country to come and share their experience, share our experiences, all that sort of thing. So I was amongst the people who were able to do that, who had that opportunity. So back in those days, I was really excited about orchestras. I thought the league conference was this really cool thing that they had set up. And then over the years, I began to get a little disillusioned, and that's when I started getting into decolonizing classical music, the white centricity of the programming, much less who was on stage and who was in the audiences, and that sort of led me toward a resentment of not only orchestras in general, but this very conference, this very institution, the League of American Orchestras. And as longtime listeners know, my Buddhism has really impacted the way that I view the world and engage this work, and that's really starting to show up as far as orchestras are concerned. I used to take a lot of pride in saying, "Oh, you're probably not going to find me on stage playing a Beethoven symphony anytime soon," which may still be the case. But I went to the Minnesota Orchestra last week. I was doing their pre-concert talks, and on the program was Andy Akiho's timpani concerto. Shout out to Andy and shout out to Eric Ripple, who played the solo. I mean, that was probably the most exciting thing I had ever seen an orchestra do. I was so thrilled by the performance. I almost hate to admit this. This is Triloquy. I'll admit it. I left because I didn't want the Franck Symphony that was on the second half to ruin my mood in any way. Anyway, but orchestras are able to do exciting things and things that really engage me and make me want to come back. Just the week before, at the last minute, I bought tickets to the New York Philharmonic to see the world premiere of a work by Natalie Joachim, who's been on the podcast twice, actually. Really incredible Haitian work, a film-centered work. And on the first half of that concert was a violin concerto, a work for violin and percussion by Lou Harrison, who is a composer who I used to air all the time in Knoxville when I was on the radio there. Anyway, with me having these back-to-back-to-back positive orchestral experiences, I began to think, okay, you know what? Maybe there is something here for me. I mean, the orchestral industry did nurture me. It is why I'm standing here in this hotel room. It is why I'm able to see different parts of the world, how I'm able to pay my bills, pay this New York rent. I mean, even though I don't play with orchestras today, that is the infrastructure that sort of got me to where I am. When I think about that, and I think back on these past 10 years as I'm again here back in this same hotel at this same conference, I have to take a step back and put my humility hat on, my humility pants on, and just admit that while everything with this institution in particular isn't perfect, while there's still so much work to do, the relationships that I've built over the years, and again, the professional and personal trajectory is something that I'm so grateful for, that so few people have an opportunity to really engage and really get to do. Just walking through the halls of the hotel as I'm starting to check in. I mean, I literally walked into the hotel room, bags and all, and run into a composer. Shout out to Marina Lopez, who I was able to support in my work at ACO. I got her a commission through the Toolman Foundation. There's folks who I have been able to connect with that are supporting HBCU musicians and composers who, gave me the gentle nudge to connect with some folks to get some paperwork done. Anyway, I can't even get to my hotel room before the relationships are popping up, and I'm seeing the impact that I've been able to have thanks to this orchestral infrastructure in the United States. I do have visions for myself beyond the U.S. Maybe that's something that I'll share with y'all in the coming weeks. But I just wanted to take the time right here on my platform to celebrate the innovations that I am seeing, if only marginal, the innovations I'm seeing with American orchestras, to thank the League of American Orchestras for the work that they've been doing over the years and the ways in which this organization has directly and indirectly played a role in who I am today, and to encourage you to take a second look at your frustrations with the orchestral field, or whatever field it may be, and just to have a little gratitude. I know that everyone isn't there. Again, it's my Buddhist practice that really puts me in the mode of gratitude that will allow me to engage a conversation like this. And trust me, there's still a lot of work to do. Again, I did not stay for the second half of that Minnesota Orchestra concert because I think there are so many other things in the world to celebrate and to spend that time and money and those resources on, other than the symphony of someone who isn't here and is from a region of the world and represents a musical aesthetic that has been centered for so long. So, that work is still going. I'm not abandoning that personal politic, that artistic politic. I'm just counting the wins where I can for the sake of having the fuel to keep moving forward. So that's what it is. I have the bassoon on this trip because I got to practice for a performance of some new music that's coming up when I land back in New York early next week. So, advocating for new music in that way is still very important for me. I'm so glad that the bassoon and the flutes, I'll say, are showing up in my life more and more. Things are good, and it's all the result of gratitude. So the theme of this triloquy is find some gratitude in what you're frustrated with, and things will blossom. I think that's the case. Hope this mobile setup, this little mobile mic, is all right for you. I'll be back in my studio, maybe in 4 or 5 days, to give y'all another one, or I might give you another one from this setup before I get home. I have lots in the backlog to share. But anyway, thanks as always for tuning in. Really an honor to continue to have such a broad and deep listenership of this show. Keep being grateful, keep being dangerous, keep agitating, and I'll share more with y'all soon. Peace.